Hey, well, good morning, Cole Canyon Coyotes. Welcome to our Friday Flag video. Whether you are a student or staff member, appreciate you tuning in each week. Keep collecting those hero tickets, guys and girls, because you could win a fun prize for your class and at our live Friday Flag assemblies, like we did one last week. We appreciate you tuning in to these videos, okay? But let's first start with the Pledge of Allegiance, shall we? Go ahead and stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. All students, next week is Parent-Teacher Conference Week, and grades kindergarten through 5 are out at 12:30 each day. The morning snack recess is the only time, like I said at the Friday Flag Assembly when we were live last Friday, the only time during the snack recess you can get lunch during those 5 days. So this 20 minutes will go by fast at each grade level, so plan accordingly. Food items will be served in the MPR like a typical lunchtime, and teachers will do the lunch counts in the morning. As always, please follow all directions of the Cafe Playground aides at the lunch tables and out on the playground, and with Miss Juanita and her team in the MPR. We appreciate that. Now here's Miss Lane with a couple student expectations.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. I want to discuss an important topic to help ensure that everyone is having fun and feeling safe at school. Recently, we have noticed some problems with keeping our hands to ourselves and respecting the personal boundaries of others, which has led students to feeling a little upset and not being able to enjoy their playtime out on the playground. Remember that when adults give you directions, it's really important to listen and to follow them. We're not trying to get you into trouble. Our goal is to keep you safe so that you can have a great time at school. By not following directions or instructions, it can cause problems with your friends. What we don't want is for you to get into trouble and even have to call your parents. So let's all strive to be good citizens on the playground and in the classroom. And this means respecting everyone's personal boundaries and keeping our hands to ourselves. This way, everyone can have an amazing day here at Cole Canyon.
Well, hello students and staff. As you all know, every Friday video, we get to recognize all the students in all the grade levels who have earned that hero shout out from his or her teacher. These are students who have shown what it means to be helpful, encouraging, respectful, and outstanding. So let's get started. In kindergarten, in Mrs. Eisinger's class, we have Charlotte. In Mrs. Amcrott's class, we have Ariano and Jamie. In Mrs. Gorton's class, we have Ethan and Layla. In first grade, in Mrs. Stringer's class, we have Remington. In Mrs. Cron's class, we have Ashton. In Miss Espinosa's class, we have Leilani. Mrs. Moore's class, Taylor. Mr. Reagan's class, William. And Mrs. Shaw's class, Zach. Moving on to second grade, in Mrs. Tree's class, Adelina. Mrs. Silva's class, Jack. Mrs. Garrity's class, Camille and Victoria. Mrs. Pacey's class, Carrie and Roy. Mrs. Gonzalez's class, Abby and Grayson. Mrs. Manzella's class, Charlie and Delaney. And in Mrs. De Leon's class, Miguel. Moving on to third grade, in Mrs. Hess's class, Liam. Mrs. Levin's class, we have Joseph and Josie. In Mrs. Welcher's class, Jimena. Mrs. Hewittson's class, Cade and Everly. Mrs. Tope's class, Connor. And in Mrs. Hartley's class, Mia. In fourth grade, congratulations to Amber and Aubrey from Mrs. Ariana's class. In Mr. Gable's class, Eva. In Mrs. Calvia Murray's class, Savannah. Mr. Pacey's class, Andrew and Peyton. And in Mrs. Trujillo's class, Sailor. Last but not least, moving on to fifth grade, we have for Mrs. Schroeder's class, Cademan and Gemma. Mrs. Reagan's class, Connor. Mrs. Greenstein's class, Emma. Mrs. Murray's class, Kelsey. Mrs. Miranda's class, Max and Maddie. Mrs. Bethke's class, Sage. And in Mrs. Hemrick's class, we have Jonathan. A big congratulations to all the students who earned that weekly shout out. Remember that these names are going to be entered in that monthly drawing for that class prize for our next live Friday Flag. So keep being a hero, everyone. Let's wrap it up with Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, team. So proud of your efforts to be heroes out on our campus. We hope these videos encourage you to make good choices and support you to be part of our dynamic community of learners. Growing and learning each day. Have a great weekend, everyone. We will see you on Monday. Take care.